Chris Oak coming back at you with screenwriting the way I see it. Continuing on with your antagonists. We talked about the types of antagonists of the gun-toting villain, serial killer guy, force of nature, opposing will. Um, we talked about how you needed to give them traits that make them appealing and grab the audience, and not necessarily positive traits. You can have the complete evil villain, that's fine. But you need to make them sympathetic or enviable. Now we're going to talk more about what that meant. But now we're going to talk about kind of the why and how to build them. Your protagonist should have, by this point, some character flaws and some negative traits. Whatever those negative traits are, your antagonist should exploit that. If your character is very if your protagonist is very shy or timid or insecure, well then it's a good thing to make maybe the antagonist the opposite of that, where they are very sure, they are very confident, very beautiful, very talented, the jock or whatever. That's kind of stereotypical and maybe cliche, but it works. It's a tried and true formula that does work where you show their antithesis or whatever. That's work. It's a great way to go, and it's proven. It's proven to work. There's other ways to do it more on maybe a psychological level of where this person, your protagonist, has some inner demons, and maybe that antagonist, has them too and knows how to exploit them. Maybe almost like a kindred spirit in a way, but has gained a different type of control over it, or lack of control even. You got to play. My point is, however you go with it, you got to play off of who your protagonist is if you want a great story, great conflict. Which again, all story comes from conflict. Even your comedy, all is going to come from conflict. There's no story without conflict. So your antagonist, we also, as I mentioned, talked about sympathetic or enviable. Well, if you have your villain, your antagonist is one of the two. If I see that they're a really great, say like your main character wants to be a football player, and this other person is going off the same position of the team. Your antagonist is going to the same position of the team, and he's just awesome at his sport. That makes the challenge of overcoming him for your protagonist that much greater. Okay, so I envy the antagonist's sports prowess, making that in turn makes the protagonist that much more likely to not overcome it, which creates more conflict. Okay, so with sympathetic, even if I have a villain who, or antagonist rather, who feels like maybe the protagonist is younger and smarter, or younger and stronger, and he feels like he's being sort of ousted wrongly from his spot on the football team, for instance. That creates a sort of sympathy. We all have been there, where we don't want to be replaced by somebody bigger, stronger, faster. We can sympathize with it, and we can see how it creates another layer of drama and conflict. You're still going to root for your protagonist because of his own dramas and conflict, and we're centering the story around him. But you can see how there's a layer of depth to the antagonist. He's not just a two-dimensional character. Okay? So all this is about creating a completely visualized bad guy, a completely visualized antagonist that has to be overcome, and it's in some way represent what your protagonist has to overcome, and not directly. Rocky is a great example that we can point to Rocky was insecure and low self-esteem and just wanted one shot at the title. And Apollo Creed was brash, cocky, flamboyant, and a better boxer, period, than Rocky. He was better shape, better skills, better training, better food. He was better everything. So it was this huge obstacle for Rocky to even remotely try and overcome. So they created that much more conflict. So they really created a very layered, you know, antagonist. And even in Rocky 2, it just got even deeper. They added another layer where they sort of flipped it, where Apollo was now jealous of Rocky, and you add that other layer where he wanted to beat Rocky now, even more so. He was more threatened by Rocky, and Rocky had gained a little bit of a leg up on some of the, physical issues of. He actually had, he'd proven himself. He gained self-esteem, and he had the people had sort of polarized behind him, and it created another layer of the conflict and drama. So, don't get me wrong, it's not all about creating black and white, where yin and yang. It does. I'm not saying it has to be yin and yang. It doesn't have to be polar opposites, negative, positive. I'm just saying that if you create a little bit of that, if you're smart and play with it, you create these layers of conflict. And the best villains have a simple goal, but they are layered. Darth Vader, was layered. He was evil, and he wanted to control the universe. And then as it went along, you found out that he was a fallen Jedi, and he had lost his son and didn't know where his daughter was, and all these layers sort of kind of come out. So he became more sympathetic, but because he kept choosing to do evil, it made him evil. Okay, it almost made it more dramatic that he was choosing to do evil. Okay, so all we're saying here at this point of what we're doing is if you take your villain, give him a simple goal. What do they want to do? Make him play off of your protagonist who you've already developed, and develop some polarizing attributes, some greater attributes than your protagonist, and maybe even some lesser attributes where his negatives are even more negative. You can create a great layered, textured antagonist. This is not the easy part of making a story, but if you work at it a little bit, it gets easier with each time. This one takes some work, and protagonist in some ways is a lot easier to develop. Everybody thinks that the bad guy is, he's just a great bad guy, just make him evil. It's not that simple. Just a plain Jane, he's bad. What is it? He's just bad. Well, it rarely works. How many dime a dozen beam action movies you've seen where the bad guy wants to control the world? Well, who was he? Well, he just got nuked and he wanted to control the world. Well, you don't know anything about him. Who was he? He didn't stand out. How many Bond villains have you forgotten? And which ones do you remember? Think about it. The Bond villains you forget, why do you forget them? They just got a nuclear bomb to control the world. What would they do? I don't know. The ones you remember, they had hurts, they had pain, they had shrinks. All those things stand out. So, good exercise. Take your villain, your antagonist. What's their goal? What are their traits? Top 5, like the protagonist. Top 5 negative, and you'll be on your way to creating a really well-rounded antagonist. So, we'll be back with more screenwriting per me. So, I'll see you next time.